All right, let's jump back into this concerning the Black community. So we're on question number 5.
5? I thought we was on 30.
Nope.
All right. Number 5. All right.
So speaking of Black folks,
Okay.
who we love, how, from your perspective, how could polygyny benefit the Black community?
I'm going to answer the question, but I'm going to say I don't think that's a fair question. It's the same way monogamy can benefit the Black community. Marriage benefits mankind.
You're saying the common denominator is marriage.
Correct.
Regardless of what type of marriage it is.
Correct. Healthy.
Unless it's
relationships.
polyandry.
Unless it's polyandry. Yes, that is correct. Unless it's polyandry. But healthy relationships. Because I believe that women, which is documented, women outnumber men, it's important for a woman to not only find a man, but find a man who she's compatible with. Mm-hmm. And that man may actually already have a wife. That man already may be in a committed relationship. So if that woman, who it's important for that woman to know herself and know what she can tolerate,
or be happy with it. I don't want to tolerate the rest of my life. I want to enjoy it.
Well, listen, there's a lot of people in marriages tolerating people, but that's a topic for another podcast. But I sit down, it's like, if that's what you think you want, and I don't care what anybody says. If you could look at somebody and say you love them. Like, I love this person. I genuinely have their well-being in mind, and this person makes me happy. Then I say, go for it. And if you'd be like, listen, I feel some type of way about being with him because none of this feels right to me, then don't do it because you don't want to live in conflict. But the benefit of it, to answer the question, is companionship. God didn't create any of us to be alone, not a near one. And so sometimes you have to know what you can accept, what you can't accept, what a person brings to the table, what you plan to bring to the table. And if that allows you to have a lifetime of happiness, then by all means, go for it.
So I have a follow-up, and I don't remember whether this is one of the questions that will come up later, but if it is, we can just expound on it. But the thing about what you just said, from my perspective, let me see if I can remember my follow-up now that I did all that talking. But so the main thing is that the issue is marriage, and the issue is family. That's what the real issue is. It's not the type that you have. And yes, I forgot my follow-up.
That's all right, because I want to jump in right now anyway. So I don't want us to forget, polygamy is a type of relationship.
Yeah.
Polygyny is a type of relationship. Monogamy is a type of relationship. And so when you decide to engage in a relationship, and that's what I say about what's going on out here, any man can go and get a bunch of women pregnant. That doesn't make it polygyny. Okay. That's just whoredom. Okay. And so when you're making a distinction here between whoredom based on your worldview, which is biblical from your perspective. Correct. Then that's different than polygyny. Well, listen, and I can't say it's just mine, because what we see and what we hear in music, what we see defined in the American English dictionary, said all of that. You sleep with a woman without commitment. That's whoredom. Now, if there's a commitment there, if you say like, hey, listen, this is what we're doing here, then there's a relationship status established with it. I need to have that understood and defined, because people take polygyny and they're like, oh, well, yeah, that's my other wife. That's not your other wife. Not if she don't know. She don't even be like, you got a wife over here, you got a wife over here. You saying you in polygyny, and the only person that knows is you. So he just wants to screw, basically. Correct. And as a matter of fact, she doesn't even think she's in a relationship with you. She just found out. She's like, oh, my goodness, I got pregnant. Right? And so what happens is that, I say for us, is that we need to understand how to properly define polygyny and understand how to properly define healthy relationships. Our women have been treated in such a way for so long and been told they're everything other than what a woman is that now they find themselves fighting for the respect that they deserve in a relationship. That's wrong. Yeah. You shouldn't go into a relationship wondering what your status is. Even if, and I'm not saying that I accept it, but even if you decide to be a whore you can stop and say, well, I'm being a whore tonight. Right? You know the status.
Okay.
When you stop and you dealing with a man and you're like, what is our relationship status right now? Where are we going with this? Or what's the end all to this? There's something wrong with that. And that's how we broke down as a people.
Okay. I really appreciate the distinction you just made, but I also just realized what my follow-up question was.
It's all good. Come on.
So when we look at the numbers,
okay,
the numbers alone, this may come up later, but when we look at the numbers alone, if polygyny is something that is practiced by too many men, then you will have men who can't have wives. So this is just, we're talking about arithmetic, right? And if this is something in the Black community that becomes widespread enough, and it doesn't have to be too widespread, because if one man takes 2 wives, or let's just say that even if we get to the point where women are 75% of the population and men are only 25, right? Once a few men have 4 wives, then it starts leveling off. And if more and more men have 4 wives, sooner or later you'll have men who can't build their families. So what do you think about that?
Point taken. I don't know if that has ever happened in the history of the world. There are not enough women. The only place I could think of where something like that could possibly happen is in China.
Yeah.
Like where they have population control. Right? But see, with them, they are telling either you have a boy or you have a girl. You can't have more than 2 and things of that nature. And so what I stop and say is, I bring my biblical perspective once again. King Solomon had 700 wives and 300 concubines.
So there were people in there were men in his kingdom that possibly could not have wives, because why would a woman want, some women who don't mind polygyny would prefer King Solomon over the pauper sitting there.
That's to assume that of the 4 women left, all 4 of them want me, right?
Okay.
It doesn't work out like that. And so that's why I says, is it a possibility? I think it's a very far-reaching possibility. However, I will concede that if we're going to deal with law of averages, that's possible. Yeah. But I don't think that it will work out like that. And so what I say is that, and God creating us, God created Adam, he created Eve, he created somebody for him. Right. And so I believe that there's somebody out there for each and every one of us.
Okay.
You just have to find who your match is. And part of that is in dealing in healthy relationships, realizing when somebody is for you and when somebody is not for you. And sometimes we close off our eyes to certain people because we don't really know what we want. We just know what we've been told we should want.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And I think a lot of people who are developmental adolescents, for example, or people who behave as if they are, allow the social engineering of society to tell them that this particular complexion of a woman or man is more desirable, or they prefer to bring a certain, phenotype around their family, but they haven't even dug slightly beneath the surface to determine what they actually like. Yeah. So let's go on to question number 6. How do kids benefit when their dad is only in the house part-time if he's married to a woman in different households? So some people who do polygyny will have women in different households. I could completely understand that. I don't know if I could imagine being in the same household with my husband sleeping with somebody else, but again, I come from a monogamy paradigm. So, but yeah, so how do kids benefit when their dad is only in the house part-time, when he's married to women in different households, so he has to jump from household to household?
I can't speak with specificity.
Yeah.
Did I get it out? Specificity. However, I'll stop and say that, you have men who are entertainers who are not always home.
Yeah.
You have men who are in the armed forces who are not always home. They travel a lot. And I think it's not necessarily fair to put it on the man because he's not there every day as the child would like or as the woman would like, that he's being absent in his duties. However, I do concede to the fact you cannot be an absentee father. You do have to spend some time with your family. However, that would be on the man in that relationship. And that would be according to the nature of their relationship. And sometimes even when you travel, sometimes you got to bring your family with you, right?
Yeah.
And so we see entertainers, they do that. They're like, hey, listen, I've been going this amount of time. And then there's certain jobs that people work, which I've seen. And they go, all right, we're sending you away for 30 days.
Yeah.
So we'll allow you to bring your family for 2 weeks of that time that you're gone, so you can spend some time with your family, which is healthy, which makes sense.
Yeah.
Even armed forces, they'll say you got to go back home for a while to be with your family. Every night, I don't personally, I don't think it's necessary for a man to be home every night. And just because he's not home every night, that doesn't mean that he's with another woman or that he's up to no good. That's just his schedule. But that would be for the man dealing in polygyny to handle that aspect in order to bring happiness to his home. And so what I'll say in closing for this part is that, you know, a man, there's sometimes where certain situations call for you to be in a certain household. If you have a child with special needs.
Okay.
If something is happening with the neighbors and maybe something's getting volatile, it may cause you to be there a little bit more often than you need to be. But the reality is that, you know, I don't know if you're going to have 2 women in like 2 different states and you think you're going to split half the week between them. It's just not practical. And as my co-host has stated to me before, what do you call that? Planning fallacy?
Yeah, planning fallacy.
Right. Like, it's not going to happen. Mm-hmm. Like, so be practical. Understand what makes you happy in your relationship. And some people, is a reality as having been married, sit down sometimes, it's like people appreciate time away. Like, that makes the heart grow fonder, right? And so it's not always there, but you do need to be there for your child's developmental stages, so that they understand what it is to be a father and to understand how it is to have a father around.
Yeah, you just mentioned something I didn't even think to ask you, and it's not on this list, about, you know, how a man can protect his household if he's only there for half of the week. You know, did you have any thoughts about that before we move on, or is it just a general point?
Listen, in any form of protection, even in protecting yourself, is all the things set up for you to be protected. Have you created an environment? Ensure that your family is living in a safe environment. Ensure that your family understands how to resolve conflict. You know, just as important as it is that I have a gun to protect the household from any intruders, is as important that I tell my children, hey, when you go out there, don't start with people, because they will follow you home. And then your problem ends up becoming our problem, and you might be wrong. Okay. And so it's important not only to have that, but to also understand, be involved with your community, be involved with your neighbors, make sure that your neighbors understand that you're good people. Yeah. Understand your friends, and make sure that your family, and all that has to do with the morals I've been speaking about and how we deal with one another, that we become good, God-fearing individuals, so that when people see us, the conflict actually stays away from us, because they understand the type of people that we are. Okay.
And just to close this segment out, I just want to make sure, just for clarity's sake, are you saying that it does not, from what you know, having children, that it does not impact a child's development when he sees his father part-time?
I think it depends. So children have a way of understanding. You tell them, hey, listen, this is what's going on, and they go, okay, fine. I think the part that becomes tough for children is when they have to adjust. Children just have an issue with adjusting. Yeah. It's like, they want stability. You all the time, right? Seen you all the time. Now I don't see you anymore. What's going on here? Or you used to do this for me, and now you're no longer doing this for me. Why? And you're not going to say that I don't see you as much anymore because you're maturing. You know, the things we may have dressed our children, and now it's like, hey, now it's time for you to begin to dress yourself. That's over a course of time. When the father is there,